Welcome, everyone. Welcome, 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 welcome. Welcome, seeing your faces come in. And as I see your faces come in, I want to, as always, welcome some folks from the more than just human world. Here's who I've got today. See if you can identify them. If you live in or around Texas, you might know who that is. Those are the urban great-tailed grackles of downtown San Antonio, Texas. You can spot them by their dark bodies with their long rear plumage as they glide across the sky, sometimes right in front of your car. These grackles have an immense repertoire of vocalizations that they use year-round. And because of their loquaciousness, some humans consider them a pest. In fact, here's a case in point. Before using my BirdNet app to Shazam those folks and figure out who they were, I asked a man next to me outside the hotel, "Do you know what kind of birds those are?" He answered, "Noisy ones," and walked off. I stayed for another 10 minutes to listen to the symphony, grateful for my ability to appreciate them, not as noise, but as a wondrous surprise delight in a mostly concrete habitat. Welcome to the Compassion Consortium's Sunday service. I'm Reverend Sarah Bowen, and I'm joined today by co-founder William Melton. Victoria is traveling this month, and so we wish her safe and healthy journeying. Our service is also brought to you through the help of our beloved team members, Phil, Elaine, and Jen. Reverend Ginny Mikita is with us to do the interspecies practice. Renee, Athay joins us to help me with the blessing. And animal rights activist Donny joins us for Compassion in Action. In order to keep a contemplative feel for our services and to ensure we don't have unwanted, disruptive guests, we've turned off most of the Zoom sharing functions, so you won't find them. We are an interfaith, interspiritual, and interspecies community. Interfaith means we welcome and feature people of any spiritual or religious tradition or system of meaning making. And today I'll be talking with multi-faith religious scholar and activist, Dr. Lisa Kemmerer, which I'm so excited about. Interspiritual means that we believe underneath all of the world's wisdom traditions, there lies a deeper unity of experience and care for communities. Interspecies means we desire to have a truly inclusive spiritual community that rejects human superiority and considers the needs of the many species we share the planet with. For example, I am speaking to you today from outside Shreveport, Louisiana, land of the Caddo, the Choctaw, and other native peoples, as well as the Louisiana black bears, white alligators, the great blue heron, gopher tortoises, and the southern leopard frogs, all who face unique joys and challenges in their habitats and in their own velds. So take a minute to consider as you arrive here today in this space. Who's in your habitat today? What needs do they have? And what challenges do they face? I'm here in Louisiana because the Compassion Consortium has just completed 2 of this year's outreach activities, and I'm on the very long journey home. The first was a cat event in New York, fraught with ethical quandaries. From our booth location in Rescue Alley, we observed the challenges facing shelter cats in a capitalist society that still prizes, literally, some animals over other animals, in this case, some cats over other cats, judging them publicly in this way. We managed our cognitive dissonance, observing this system, and also seeing the great love people had for their cat companions. It was messy, to say the least. I had my lunch break outside with the local birds, eating from my backpack, avoiding the crowded hot dog stand that was inside, phoning a friend to emotionally download. And she asked me, Sarah, aren't you complicit in the mess if you attend this? But I doubled down on my belief that we can make change from within structures and systems, those that we want to make more compassionate and aware of animal needs. Accordingly, our volunteer animal chaplains, Stacy and Adele, and I spoke with humans working in nonprofit rescue and rehoming organizations who are trying to address the health issues of surrendered and special needs and critically aging cats. We attended to their compassion fatigue and their burnout. And we supported many of the cats in the space too, who we perceived as nervous or as scared, providing them care as we were able to. Next, it was off to San Antonio, Texas, where those grackles are, for the Humane Society's annual Humane Pro Conference, the Animal Care Expo. There we joined animal advocates from all over the world who work in veterinary science, sheltering, field services, wildlife biology, sanctuary management, and on and on and on. Hundreds of presentations over 4 days, almost 3,000 people, addressing myriad challenges facing animals. Happily, there was no hot dog stand I had to avoid every time I went to the bathroom. All the food was plant-based. And while we did still experience some places of tension where people's viewpoints didn't quite line up with ours perfectly, we were able to have deep and honest conversations about compassion for animals. And again, our animal chaplains, Jill, Robin, and Sarah, offered solace in our booth to those who were experiencing loss, grief, compassion fatigue, moral injury, vistopia, burnout, you name it, it was all there, and other well-being challenges from being an animal advocate or an activist. With our brightly lit memorial tree, we encourage people to name and recognize loss. As their eyes welled up and they said, I'm sorry, we exclaimed, criers are winners in this booth, and we handed them tiny, small stuffed animals to touch and to keep, to soothe their emotional distress and to ground them in their bodies. In our self-care station, we offered tips for cultivating resiliency, attending to personal well-being with our bright, fluffy rug and bright colors, smiling faces, plentiful boxes of Kleenex. We provided care for the humans who care for and care about animals. And of course, we provided information on the Compassion Consortium's mission and how people could get involved with us for ongoing support. Rather than judge our success by how much we sold, in fact, we were selling nothing, we judged our success by how many people came back again to visit us and deepen their conversation, and by those who engaged in our creative breakfast workshops called What the Fluff? Dealing with Emotions in Animal Advocacy and Care. One woman came to our booth daily, calling it her oasis. This is why we exist. This is why chaplains exist. This is why our spiritual community exists. We must advocate for the well-being of cats and cows, bears and alligators, carriage horses and kangaroos. And we must attend to the well-being of humans involved in those systems too. And so we have two in-reach, as opposed to outreach, opportunities for you if you need rest and rejuvenation. Please join me, Amanda Ree, and Judy Ramsey at Omega Institute in June for a week of animal mindfulness, Ayurveda and shamanic journeying, and join Victoria for Ayurvedic-based self-care at Lilydale in August. I'll put links in the chat. So as we enter this sacred space today, folks, let us do so with the intention to improve our awareness of the well-being needs of ourselves and anyone around us who is struggling, regardless of their assigned species. Hey, William, over to you.
Mute. Okay, so, well, this is the part of our service where we read our tenets of agreement. And these tenets of agreement, as you will see, are extremely important to us. And we always, every time, ask somebody to help us reading the tenets of agreement. So right now, our tenets of agreement will be read by Jennifer Baker, who is the Compassion Consortium Special Events Coordinator. She is also a Compassion Consortium animal chaplain and has founded her own organization called Pause for Compassion, which you will see in the chat. Over to you, Jennifer.
Hello, everyone. We acknowledge a divine force at the heart of the universe and in all living beings. We may refer to this force as God, but it is known by many names and appears in different forms or as formless. We recognize the common moral principles inherent within all wisdom traditions. We affirm that compassion, reverence for life, and nonviolence are fundamental to religious faith and moral philosophy and are to be extended to all sentient beings. We stand by the principles of inclusion, diversity, and equality and hold these as essential in our human relations. We hold that non-human animals are imbued with the same essence of life and love as our human animals, and that there is moral parity between us. We avow that humans do not own the earth, its resources, or its inhabitants, but instead must be involved in their protection and care. We endeavor to eat and live in a kind and a sustainable manner, moving away from animal foods and animal-derived clothing, as well as any activities that cause harm to our fellow beings, human or otherwise. We aim to provide spiritual comfort, fellowship, and food for thought to those practicing or exploring a vegan lifestyle. We offer guidance and peer support for all those seeking a more compassionate and spiritual life. We commit to sharing these principles freely with humility and respect in support of non-human animals and the earth. Thank you.
Good afternoon or evening or morning, wherever you are. My name is Ginny Mikita, and I am blessed to have been through the animal chaplaincy program. I'm even wearing the swag to prove it. Today I'm going to share with you a bird watching as spirituality exercise. Let's begin by landing where we are in this unique and precious moment in each of our lives. I invite you to close your eyes if you're comfortable, or soften your gaze to allow yourself to fly inward. Take a deep breath in through your nose, perhaps the deepest breath you've taken all day. Notice how your arms ever so slightly rise like wings. Exhale. Take another breath in and out, noticing where your body is perched. The ground, the chair, the couch, a gentle reminder that you are held. Take one more breath. Can you feel the feathery brush of air on your exposed skin, perhaps your face? When you're ready, breathe your eyes open. In March, on World Wildlife Day, I shared a sermon with my faith community in West Michigan entitled Messengers of God, in which I highlighted pigeons, birds most of you are, I'm assuming, familiar with and have encountered in city parks. I'm even wearing my pigeon earrings. In my research, I learned that pigeons and doves are essentially the same bird. In preparation for my teaching that day, I asked friends and family if there were any birds who had graced their lives with meaning. Many shared stories of cardinals or bluebirds appearing after the death of a beloved. Exactly 1 month after my teaching, a bird, or maybe it was two, appeared in my life, offering me the opportunity to learn spiritual lessons from them. Phil, if you could put up the first slide. This is a Japanese weeping cherry tree in front of our home. It is in full bloom like this for just 1 or 2 days per year. For those 1 or 2 days, the tree literally buzzes as bumblebees appear seemingly out of nowhere. The day after the blossoms fell to the ground, I grieved as I do each year. This year, however, I stepped under the branches to feel the tree's embrace. In the center of the tree, I discovered this: a perfectly woven nest containing a single iridescent egg. It really looked like a pearl. I asked friends and did a little Googling and discovered it likely belonged to a pigeon. The following day, I peeked into the branches and joined eyes with this beautiful mourning dove. I did a little more Googling and discovered that the females and males actually take turns incubating their eggs for a period of about 14 days. For days afterward, I would quietly peek into the branches and exchange glances with either the mother or father of this little one. One day, they were gone, and there were now 2 eggs. After seeing the 2 eggs, there wasn't a time, and you can go to the next slide if you'd like to, Phil. There wasn't a single time, day or night, that she or he wasn't sitting on the eggs. I would even shine a little flashlight gently in there at night when I was out walking our dogs, and they never moved. I actually began to worry that they weren't eating and tossed mourning dove seed that I had left over from my message that I'd given a month prior at the base of the tree. Mind you, this was classic Ginny, the human, worrying about Mother Nature. I was reminded that our interference with wildlife is generally just that, interference. 1 week ago, this is what I spotted. My eyes met 2 pairs of eyes, and actually these are the babies. The next day, a parent came back and sat next to them in this nest that their little family had completely outgrown. So this is either the male or the female with the babies. The following day, they were gone. Just as I did with my own children, I grieved the empty nest. Another reminder that life is a series of beginnings and endings and beginnings again. If you have an interest in identifying the avian beings that you're seeing and hearing in your habitats, I also highly commend Cornell University's free app called Merlin ID. It's a free app and I use it frequently. Emily Dickinson once wrote, "Hope is the thing with feathers." May you find hope and other spiritual lessons in and from the birds with whom you share your world. Namaste.
Oh, Ginny, we're on theme today, aren't we? It's Feathered Friend Day here at the Compassion Consortium. Thank you so much for that beautiful practice and that way of doing a practice and thinking about breathing. Kind of in relation to birds, I was thinking about what I'm perched on, and I'm perched on something very different than what I'm normally perched on. And I don't think about being perched, and I think that will stick with me all week. So reminder again to check what are you perched on, folks? I wonder if that thought will follow us, that thread, throughout the next month, or how are we breathing, and what is our attention to birds? So thank you, Ginny, for bringing our attention to that part of the more than just human world, and also what we do sometimes when we love to care for those in and around our yards. All right, folks, it is my pleasure today as Victoria is traveling to do our interview with a guest, our spiritual guest interview. So I'm going to let you know who's coming on up, and then we are going to have a little conversation here, which I think is going to be quite fascinating because I have known Lisa's work for quite some time and am actually really excited about the auspiciousness of getting to talk to her today. Internationally known for her work in animal ethics, Dr. Kemmerer is the founder of the information sharing nonprofit Tapestry. Dr. Kemmerer, or Dr. K to many, holds a BA in International Studies, a Master of Theological Studies in Comparative Religions, and a PhD in Philosophy with a focus on animal ethics. So you'll see how those things entwine. She taught ethics and religious studies in Montana for 20 years and has written more than 100 articles, anthology chapters, and 13 books, many of which I know are on our shelves here at the Compassion Consortium, and probably some of yours as well. Dr. Kemmerer retired in 2020 to become a full-time social justice activist. Her book, Animals and the Environment, Advocacy, Activism, and the Quest for Common Ground, was especially helpful for me on reflecting how to search for common ground when considering the health and well-being of individual animals, species, habitats, and ecosystems. And I picked up some very useful ideas for how to reach into those places where animal advocates and planetary activists can feel ideological tension sometimes, to find conversations that widen the viewpoint to include all the stakeholders. She's written a lot of useful books for animal activists exploring interspecies concerns in a particular religion or across in comparative religious studies. And so I'm absolutely delighted to have Dr. K or Lisa Kemmerer, however we refer to this human, with us today. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. What a beautiful service so far. And I have heard so much about your work as well. So I've met so many of your students. So it's very nice to be here on a lot of counts.
I feel like we should sing It's a Small World. So perhaps our next song of compassion will be It's a Small World. All right, so I'd like to ask you this perhaps irreverent question to ask of a accomplished scholar, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Before we get into talking about your work, can you give us a little insight into pre-scholarly Lisa? Like, were you that little kid playing in the mud studying toads? Or were you the one with your nose buried in a book in the library reading Corner, or someone else? Tell us about pre-scholarly Lisa.
I'd argue that I'm not a scholar. I'm an activist.
Pre-activist Lisa.
And
or were you always an activist?
There was no pre-activist Lisa. Yeah. So for me, I was someone who thought a lot, and I was very much a hands-on person. So I was definitely out in the mud. I was not a book person. I was definitely one with hands-on who just liked to also just stand back, and where humans were concerned, I spent a lot of time just standing back watching.
Fascinating. Okay. So seems like this was with you from the very, very beginning, this kind of desire to look at these topics. When did you come to decide that interspecies relations were something you needed to start writing about or start attending to academically and teaching about? How did that happen?
Well, nothing happens very fast with me. It's always a process of fits and starts, and it's never intentional. So I couldn't even say when or how that happened. I would say that it was a natural to go from the hands-on, from an activist who liked to sit around and think. Becoming a teacher seemed like the right thing to get that activism out into the world. And to be a teacher, you have to write. You have to write. You have to publish to teach. So I think that's how it happened.
So across decades now, you've written extensively.
Yes.
Extensively.
I've taken to it like a fish to water. And it's because I've really realized that that's how you reach people, is you put something out there and hope for the best with it. And so writing's become one of the ways that I try very hard. I have a niche now. I have something that needs to be done. I found something that needs doing that I could do, and so I do it.
All right, so let's dig into it for a little bit. Let's spend some time looking at what you've discovered. So you've observed what's kind of helpful in some of our religious and philosophical systems and what's intensely harmful. And you found a lot of things, observed a lot of things, written a lot of things. And so I encourage folks to definitely pick up a couple books if what we're talking about here piques your interest, ongoing. But what have been a couple of your biggest surprises? Will you tell us a little bit about those surprises and how they have come to be in your work?
I would say that I was interested in religions. I remember my earliest days pondering what people believed and why they believed it and being fascinated by it and drawn to it. And then as I grew, I became more interested in the intersection between what we ought to do and what we weren't doing, and looking at, and somehow I figured out the importance of texts, and I found out that in those texts was a whole lot of things that people didn't seem to know about, and a whole lot of things that weren't very important that they knew a whole lot about. And so that they would quickly bring up things that were of very little relevance to the actual text, but they'd use it to defend something that for the world and humanity and animals, it's not a good thing. So those things really, really got my interest and focused me on looking at the positives in religions and what we could learn from that. And I think for me, I came to understand that if there's a good thing, if there's an ethic that's taught across religious traditions, it's just a whole nother level of it doesn't matter which religion you're from, or if you're an atheist, or if you're an agnostic. It doesn't really matter. If every religion's teaching that, there's got to be something there to look at. And that seemed very important to me.
And as you were doing that, was there anything that are there any kind of examples you can give us? Like, you've written about so many different religions, but give us a peek into some of the things that you've discovered. I noticed that you said we could actually talk about, you just pronounced the word animal, which some folks here might have noticed or picked up on. What is that about?
So animal is my way of being honest, and language is so important. We use language to hide things, to further an agenda, to keep power, to put others down. And that's why we talk about animal. It has a negative connotation in much of the culture, the way it's used, like beast. And so for me, I'm an animal and I know it. And so animal is every other species other than the speaker. So a parrot could say it, or a chimp could sign animal. And it means every other species except them. So I'm trying to use a word that keeps me honest and doesn't pretend when I say animal that I'm just talking about all the other species, because I'm not. I'm an animal. So animal takes care of that for me. And it's also so much easier to write than non-human animal, or other, which is othering to others, other animal. I don't want to other. So that's the reason.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating one because we struggle with that. With the idea of non-human persons is one of the ones that always, kind of gets in pokes me a little bit. I remember Franz de Waal said that he would correct his students when they said non-human persons, and tell them if they were going to say non-human, they should also say non-penguin and non-tiger and right to add those different kind of things in. But we struggle with this kind of lexical thing of other than human being, animal, human animal, and I struggle with it in my writing. I have tried to use the animal as well, and have used it on a number of occasions. I had to make spell check learn it, so that I had to teach spell check what Lisa knew, to do that. But how do you find when you add that concept for people, when you describe that? Is it something that sticks? Is it something that you get pushback on?
I think it's very hard. For me, I use it mostly for writing, which is very easy. But it's very hard when you're speaking, because once you've learned language, it's reflexive. You don't think about it. You just do it. But I think that whenever we use animal incorrectly, those of us who really recognize who we are and who other beings are, you've got to feel that it's just not right. It's a deception, and it's meant to be. And I think once you understand that language is purposeful, it has an intent. And just like all the other ways that we make it look like it's okay for us to put ourselves above and manipulate and exploit other beings, language does that too. It reaffirms the status quo. So I want nothing to do with it. So I have to come up, and there's more than one place where I just have to figure out a new way of saying something. And for me, this one's particularly important.
Which religion did you start studying first when you started this
Probably
journey?
the one biggest in my country, right? Christianity. But you can't start studying Christianity without studying Judaism because they share the same text. And then you've already got to start on Islam because they share many of the books from the Hebrew Bible as well, Hebrew Bible being the Old Testament. So I was off and started, but by the time I was supposed to go off to college, I realized that I really wanted to do some broader learning. When I realized that I headed to Asia with a backpack when I was a kid. I worked all summer in the woods and came out and took my money and bought a ticket and headed for Asia. I was after those religions. I wanted to be around them and learn about them and study them. And I still have the book on world religions that I bought in India. So, I would say that it started with Christianity because that's what was around me. But what fascinated me was that tendency as a child to stand back and watch and just ponder and wonder. I'll never forget I was with my sister's friends on an overnight when I couldn't have been more than 7 or 8, maybe a little older, but not much. Young grade school. And watching them do their evening prayers. And I was just fascinated. I was just like, wow, this is just, I just like, they're reading some things here in scripture and I'm thinking, seriously, are they going to take that just straightforward right off the text as it is? Are they thinking about how that all works together? And I was just a child, and I was starting to look critically at these texts and realize that something was amiss. Something was very amiss. And of course, it isn't in the texts. It's in humans, and of course, the texts also come from humans. We have to be honest about that too. What we've written down comes through the human hand and then through many human hands. So for me, the challenge with that child who had that strong spiritual inclination was very drawn to really ethics at the core of it. I wanted to know how I should live. I wanted to know how to be a good person. And I couldn't find it wherever I looked. And so I had to look for myself more deeply across faiths.
There's sometimes something that I observe among people who are interested in animals, that kind of the rejection of anything religious due to some sort of hurt or their understanding of what a particular sacred text says or what an organization has said or what a spiritual figure in leadership has said. And so there's kind of a none of that for me, thank you very much. How is that something that you come across?
Oh, all
and
the
is
time.
it something that you feel as a person who has studied all of these religions and kind of looked at them so deeply? Is it something that you feel that you need to address, or is it something where you're kind of like, okay, yeah, not for you, but the people who are, come and talk to me?
It is absolutely something I feel I need to address all the time in my writing. And the book, Animals and World Religions, and the most recent one, Animals and Christianity, Animals and Judaism, and I want to do one on each faith. The point of those books is to help people stay in their faith tradition and recognize the beauty of it. And I think we don't ever need to change faith traditions, and we certainly don't need to reject our faith tradition because a minister or a group of people fails in their compassion. And I think it's very painful. I will never forget some of my young days in a church, hearing a minister who just clearly didn't get it. It's hard for me to sit there and take it. And I'd always go talk to them afterwards. But how much can they really understand? They're in their tradition and it's all they've ever learned. You can't blame them. So that we have to stay in our traditions for a couple of reasons. One is we need that nurturance. We need that connection to something beyond ourselves. Our lives go better when we understand and draw on the larger connections and interconnections of life. And the other reason is you can't bring change once you've left your tradition. So if there's something you don't like and you walk off, seriously? Is that okay? I mean, I can get that sometimes we need to protect ourselves, but we have to work for the right and the good. It doesn't happen naturally in our lives or in the larger world. So we have to stay in our faith tradition and stay connected with those people that nurtured us when they were young and help nurture them back as we grow and learn, sharing our own understanding with them as they have with us. I think that's part of growing and changing and being a person that's connected to something more than ourselves.
So well, first of all, I couldn't agree with you more. But that is not the point, of course, for us to agree, but for us to explore. So how has studying religion through the lens of the animal activism, because again, you're an activist as well as a knowledge person here. How has it shaped you or affected you as an activist?
Ask again, please. Which part?
Yeah.
My study? How has my study affected my activism?
How has studying religion through this lens of animal activism shaped you or affected you as an activist or a person in general?
Studying religions with my particular sensitivity to nature and animals, really anything or anyone oppressed, it's deeply in me to notice it and to care about it. And so studying religions, and I actually came upon a book in my room the other day. I'm thinking, I got 2 of these, should give one to someone else. And then I opened it. And this is the book I hadn't looked at since I was very young. And there it was marked. There was a little flag and it had a women mark. Was looking at text and trying to understand the position of women in society. And so, and I remember starting to notice these things. So studying religions was essential to my holding on to them. Looking at what's really there will reaffirm any kindness, any compassion, any tenderness, any caring. And once you hear that, you're like, oh yeah, well, of course it will. I mean, it's common sense. But when you're surrounded by a society that doesn't get it, it can drive you away. It can hurt you. It can destroy your faith. And so looking carefully at texts for me was a way of keeping spirituality or religion or however you want to look at it alive in my life, alive and functional, well and working, and also of being the best activist I could be. So I feel really strongly there is no better avenue than religion for reaching people. And I have experienced it. I cannot say it strongly enough. When you meet someone who is a person of faith, you have them. They can't say, I don't care. If you understand their texts, and this is the other reason I studied them, then when you meet someone who says, oh, Genesis says we can eat animals, using the wrong term, then you can say, but did you know? And you're off and going. And you can change hearts. And as a teacher, I taught in Montana. You won't find any more conservative population, probably, than I lived with in Montana for 20 years. It works. Because they were sincere in their faith. When I would show them and tell them what's actually written in the text, it would bring real change in their lives.
So you're speaking to someone in their own language.
Yes, in their own language and in their own faith base. I mean, they want to be the best Christian that they can be, but you have to understand the text. And that's the whole point of much of the writing that I've done in the series that I'm working now. So for our purposes, animals and Judaism and animals and Christianity, it goes through and looks at the arguments and the responses, what people will say and what the obvious arguments are. And again, that's the philosopher me, and my brain was like that from a child, looking logically and giving reasoned responses. So for me, studying and putting that together with faith and then writing, and that being activism, you can see how it goes full circle and it's all connected.
So as we wrap ourselves here, I've got 2 more kind of important questions, I think, for you, Lisa. The first is, what are the challenges for you? What do you face in your work? Because we are a community of folks who are facing challenges in our work, and that's why we gather, to support each other, to share, to be able to not feel alone or isolated or have people listen to us. What challenges do you face?
Isolation, definitely. I spend all my time looking at texts and writing, and I do love my world of aloneness. I love my world of writing with my dogs and my cats and the quietness of nature where I live. But I really long for a community in place, at hand, here. And I have one friend, but I have a couple others that are, people that I consider definitely to be my friends. I can think of two that I like to spend time with at least. But the online world doesn't work for me. I'm too old fashioned for that, I guess. I need my friends to say, hey, let's go for a walk. Let's go out and eat some peas in the garden. Let's brush our dogs together. Hey, want to hold the cats with me? I mean, to me, that's a friend, is somebody right here at hand. And after I know a friend that way, then I definitely stay in touch with them online because we have that connection. But so for me, that's a challenge. And I would also say that just the suffering that over a lifetime of being an activist, the pain, the accumulative pain in PTSD from instances, from things I've seen, and from being somebody that would tendency to just watch things and not know what to do in the human world. Others would be very inclined to just step forward and do something, but I would often, especially when younger, watch things, just watch and not know what to do. And that has a traumatic effect over time.
So how do you attend to that? Are there any practices that you use to help you stay grounded, to work with that trauma, to increase your resiliency, or are there things that you've pulled from the religions you've studied, or are there personal practices you have?
Thank you for mentioning the religions I've studied. I love to read poetry. And also a part of that, I include texts right in that. Texts from all over the world, they're scriptural writings. I include those. But the number one thing I do is I have dogs and cats, and I cuddle them and I love them and I appreciate them. And my doggies need a walk every day and they get me out into the world. And I walk every day, and it's when I think I'm out in nature, it's healthy. It is invariably, I would say, probably my happiest time every day. And I don't care what the weather is. When I get done, I get up, I get my butt in the chair and I do some work because that's essential to what I need to do. And then the doggies, out we go. And then for the rest of the day, cats and dogs, and try to get other things done. But that time outside, I just find nature very healing. It affirms the interconnectedness. It reminds me of my smallness and whatever pains I have, how small they are, and how big and beautiful the world is.
Wonderful. Well, Lisa, you are always welcome here with us if you feel like coming into the digital community, the digital corridor. We have been so grateful for your time with us today. Folks, I will put Lisa's link in the chat so you can check out her books, her articles, her information. You can find her all over the place. And so hopefully if this has been intriguing to you and you'd like to learn more specificity about what she has found and observed in the world's religions and wisdom traditions, you'll be able to do so. Thank you so much for your time with us.
Thank you so much. And blessings to all of you and Victoria as well.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Compassion in Action. Today, we are thrilled to have New York-based activist Donny Moss with us. In 2008, Donny created a landmark, to me, video that revealed the true tragedy behind the carriage horse trade. And in 2015, I believe, he led an effort to save 66 chimps, which had been abandoned on some islands in Liberia, which in 2017 resulted in a $6 million award for the company that abandoned them to take care of them for the rest of their lives. He's one of my heroes, and we're just so glad to have you here today, Donny.
Thank you for the invitation, and thanks to Victoria also for inviting me. So nice to be here.
Yeah, we're glad you're here. We have a video of one of your most recent campaigns having to do with kangaroo leather. Can you tell us a bit about that before we play the video?
Yeah, sure. So a secret of the sportswear industry is that many soccer cleats are made with the skin of kangaroos. And each night, when no one's looking, commercial hunters travel into the outback and gun down, it used to be millions of kangaroos a year, including lactating mothers and their joeys, to steal their skin to sell to companies like Nike, Puma, Adidas, New Balance, and others that you haven't heard of probably, so that they could use their skin to make soccer cleats. And so a couple of years ago, an organization called the Center for a Humane Economy, and a national advocacy group based in DC, launched the Kangaroos Are Not Shoes campaign and asked me if I would volunteer to work on the campaign from New York, where we have a lot of the stores, big flagship stores of the companies that are selling kangaroo skin. And so in 2000, we obviously don't believe that anybody's skin should be used to make shoes. This particular campaign is being waged to protect wild kangaroos in Australia, who, like all other animals, deserve to live in peace with their families. And so over the past couple of years, we've been able to compel Nike, Puma, and New Balance through protest to discontinue the use of kangaroo skin and transition to cruelty-free materials. And the last holdout is Adidas. And so I think what you're about to show is a video of one of our Adidas disruptions. And I'll start by saying what you're seeing is an escalation. Whenever I work on a campaign, we start politely. We start with a polite letter, a petition, a social media post. But over time, when that doesn't have an impact, which is more often than not the case, we have to escalate. And so what you're seeing here is an escalation tactic, a disruption inside of an Adidas store. And I'll say, in protest, I found over the years that there's a big difference between protesting on a sidewalk legally and crossing the threshold onto private property and protesting there. And so you start outside, of course, and when that doesn't get anywhere, you cross over that threshold and engage in trespass. When they tell you to leave and you don't leave, it's trespass. And it's not fun, and we don't like to do it, but we know it makes a difference because it's worked. And I'll also say, when you cross that threshold, all of a sudden you have to activate companies' PR team and security team and legal team and marketing and in-store sales. And I don't know if I said human resources. So there are all of these things that have to take place inside of a company that don't necessarily have to take place when you're standing outside with signs.
When they kill the mothers! Massacres the young kangaroos! Leave the kangaroos alone!
We come from France. We agree with you.
I do want Adidas to stop killing kangaroos.
Thomas Robb, the chairman of the board of Adidas, knows that these animals are victims of terror. Thomas Robb, shame on you! Shame on you for what you do! Nike, Puma, New Balance has ended it.
Wow. So you provoke to the point of reaction. That's what your intent is.
Yeah, as I said, these in-store disruptions have been proven to be effective. We could stand outside a store 500 times and not move the needle at all. But once we cross that threshold, we find that then the companies want to engage or figure out how to get rid of us. In the video, I mentioned the name Thomas Robb, who's the chairman of the board of Adidas. He's not employed by Adidas. He's just serves on their board. He's the CEO of a media giant called Bertelsmann, which is a German media conglomerate that owns BMG and Penguin Random House and other companies you might have heard of. And so it got back to us through Adidas that Thomas Robb really didn't want to be brought into this. And so as soon as that's like giving us our marching orders, as soon as we find out someone doesn't want to be targeted, but who's in a position to make a difference, then we go after that person. So lately we've pivoted and now we're staging our protests in the lobby of the Bertelsmann building in New York City. And so now their security team has been activated and their PR people, and they've got to explain to all the employees in this skyscraper why when they're leaving for the day, there are protesters in their lobby, and why are they protesting kangaroos in the lobby of the Bertelsmann building, and should they call the police? And it at some point it becomes easier for them to stop selling kangaroo skin than it does to deal with us. So we're not necessarily changing hearts and minds. These are pressure campaigns. Where we're really being activists to help in a discrete issue.
Well, no matter how it happens, you are doing a wonderful job of helping animals. This may be a dumb question, but I have to ask, why are they so intent on using kangaroo skin? What is the thing with that?
I mean, I always like to say, first of all, it's free, right? They're not paying the kangaroos for their skin. But some athletes will say that it's more durable or more pliable or it's soft or it's malleable. I mean, I've all heard all kinds of adjectives being used, but I can tell you that most of the goals that were scored in the last World Cup were scored with cleats not made out of kangaroo skin. And that if Nike, Puma, and New Balance can make the switch to cruelty-free materials, so can Adidas. And so an exciting development on Thursday, German activists who I spoke to and sort of convinced to join the campaign actually staged a disruption inside Adidas's annual shareholder meeting in Germany. And they marched right up to the front of the room during a presentation about product innovation and disrupted. And the CEO acknowledged, much to our surprise, that he's seen the video footage of kangaroos being gunned down and skinned, and he thinks it's cruel, and that he justifies the use of kangaroo skin by saying it's a byproduct of the killing of kangaroos, which it's not. I mean, if the skins are why they're being killed. And then he said that we might be surprised by how quickly they transition away from kangaroo skin, but they're not going to do it in response to pressure. And of course, that's the only reason they're doing it is in response to pressure. And so now we're doubling down because we know that the pressure is getting to them, and we just want them to make this announcement so that we know that future generations of kangaroos aren't massacred for their skin. I mean, it's so barbaric when you think about it, gunning down families in the dark of night. The babies, the joeys, are so traumatized by the nightly hunts that instead of playing, they're hiding. And it's just, no one should be treated this way. For shoes?
No, it's a self-evident truth. And Donny, thank you so much for taking this action. I know you're working with several other organizations, but for being the public front of it. One thing I would like to mention to people, if they go to your website,
theirturn.net.
Theirturn.net. Donny's posts are right at the top. They have share tags for all the major social media platforms. So you can help get, you people who are attending and watching this can help get the word out there as well. I was astounded and disgusted by this when I read about it. And I love that more goals are scored with faux leather than with kangaroo skin. So I'm going to definitely be sharing your stuff. We're closing now, but I always like to ask people, especially an activist like yourself, what is the one thing that each of us can do today to be an activist or to make the world a more compassionate place?
I mean, I think compassion starts on our plates. So, I mean, I think the most impactful thing that any of us can do is to stop eating and wearing animals, and obviously to not use them for entertainment. I mean, I always like to say that, animals are here with us, not for us. And that, in 2024, with all of the cruelty-free alternatives that are widely available to most of us, and with everything we know about the impact of eating animals on our health, on the planet, and on the animals themselves, there's just really no reason to continue eating animals. And so, it just so happens that most of my campaigns aren't focused on the sort of the vegan ethic and going vegan. I tend to work on these discrete pressure campaigns, but really, I mean, in my heart, the thing that I do in my day-to-day life when I'm not, working on one of these campaigns is to try and move the needle and get people to make the switch and make the connection between, the dogs and cats who we have at home and love and all of the animals who we sit down to eat 3 times a day.
Well, I'm right there with you, Donny. And thank you once again. We've run out of time, but thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. This was such a treat.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you, Donny. We have had such a full day today of talking about the different ways that we can affect change, being in organizations, being in events, working through with sacred texts, changing hearts and minds, using scholarship, and using direct actions like this. So I think it's been a really full day of all of the pieces of the puzzle that go into making change using different methods. As we wrap our time together today and get ready for a little fellowship, we move to what we call blessings and prayers. We start with some good news, and then we talk about some of our challenges. So here is the good news that I pulled for you all today. And if you have good news, please put it in the chat. Phil is opening up the chat so that you can put any wins or any good news personally, or for animals, or for animals, or for the planet, whatever. Anything goes here. Arriving just in time for next month's celebration of Pride. Happy early Pride, folks. A new documentary is going to launch on Peacock's NBC streaming service called Queer Planet, which will highlight gender and sexual diversity in the animal kingdom. Now, we haven't seen it yet, so I will report back on how I feel they do. But we have long been fans of Joan Roughgarden and other scientists who have lifted up the amazing array of genders and sexual diversity within other species, breaking the idea that any religious deity or evolutionary path caused some sort of thing where there is only male and female. So I think that is good news, but I will report back on how I think they do. We also attend to any challenges alongside those good news. And I know we have a lot of challenges, folks. You've had loss, you've had health issues, people you love have health issues or have had loss. Things are happening in your communities that you feel powerless about. If there's anything that you would like to also put in the chat where you would like encouragement, you would like to be held or witnessed by this community in the things that you're challenged by, please also put that in the chat. And we encourage you to support each other in the chat. Now that Zoom chat is threaded, right? You can offer your own prayers, blessings, encouragement, or just emoji love to each other through the chat for what ends up appearing there. And while you do that, I am going to invite up here with me Renee, Athay. Renee is part of the Wood Dragons Animal Chaplaincy Cohort, which you'll all be meeting next month as we celebrate their ordination and their graduation. She is a community-engaged Buddhist minister, a movement chaplain, which doesn't mean yoga, actually means movements themselves, and an inner being death doula. For the past year, she has also apprenticed with Francis Weller's grief tending rituals. And if you don't know the work of Francis Weller, please look it up. And she will offer inner being and eco grief tending groups in the months ahead. Today, she is going to offer us a poignant blessing for bison, which will be followed by a video which Phil will show that Renee took of the bison for whom this blessing is, but we could, of course, extend it to all bison in the world. Renee, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sarah. Bless the grass and sunlight, the rain, the dirt, the wind. Bless the memory of open prairies, waves of moving with your kin. May you know your captivity harms us all. May you run, remembering.
May you know your captivity harms us all. May you run, remembering. I think we could extend those beautiful words, Renee, to all animals who are currently captive. And may their liberation be close at hand. And in the meantime, may their well-being be attended to. Renee, thank you so much for joining us today. And folks, I'm going to presence what you've got in the chat here as Phil brings up our final blessing for a friend who passed away, for Erin who lost her cat Jax this past week. I'm going to add some prayers for my mother who is ill, for other people that we know who are healing. There is also some good news. A young cat adopted by Anastasia is affectionate and caring, and we're calling her Rio. Her name is Rio, and she complete that sentence, folks. Yeah. And Jody Lynn says, blessings to my precious Aunt Gail who departed Earth on Thursday. Love you to the moon and beyond. For Stephanie's baby G passing, her pup. Yeah, we offer blessings and prayers for all of these beings. And if you have them, keep coming in the chat and keep attending to each other as we say these words aloud that I invite you to say along with me. The words we say every month. May all creatures everywhere be happy and free. May the thoughts, words, and actions of our lives contribute to this happiness and this freedom for all. And please add your favorite closing word, whether that be, may it be so, amen, amen, so mote it be, or om, shanti, shanti, shanti. Thank you all for coming to Sunday service. I hope you stick around for fellowship. But first, William has a few quick announcements.
This is where we always just kind of talk about what's coming up in the near time. And so we just want to let you know about a few upcoming events before our fellowship time. And while I read these, Phil has given you all the opportunity to turn on your video cameras if you like. We'd love to see you as we close the service and move into our fellowship time. So feel free to join us. So in our June service, we have something very, very special, and that is going to be celebrating the ordination of our latest, it's our third animal chaplain cohort. With a very special service. It will include some of our creative practices and will honor their achievements in creating frameworks for increasing compassionate service for animals and humans who care for and protect them. So please come support us at our service, our June service. We call this group the Greenwood Wood Dragons due to their emerging during this auspicious year. So please join us if you can. And then our June Compassion in Action guest will be Dr. Jeff Feynman, a veterinarian, molecular biologist, and cherished member of our community. Reverend Sarah's already mentioned that we do have our Compassion Consortium Animal Spirituality and Mindfulness Retreat at the Omega Institute. That's New York, June 23 to 28. And then it's a very special event, this fall spiritual form retreat titled A World That Works for All. It will be held at the Unity Village in Missouri near Kansas City from October 16th to in 2024 with Carol Saunders, who's one of our advisory board members. And our keynote speaker this year, or this year, will be John Pierre. So then this is in the chat. All of these are in the chat to find more information about them. And then we have our meditation time every week, half-hour vegan-oriented meditation and mindful sharing with David Simon on Monday evenings. And you'll see the information regarding this event. Then we always have our engaged member practice circle, and that will be on June 11th. More details will be provided. And then the next, just to remind you that if you would like to be a member of the Compassion Consortium, you can become one at this link at the compassionconsortium.org/membership, and that isn't posted. Then we have our monthly companion animal loss and grief peer support group, which is facilitated by Reverend Ginny Mikita, and it is open to the public, so please feel free to share and join us on that. And then last thing, I think that Victoria already mentioned that, is that she will be offering a wonderful one-day self-care workshop, Spiritual Self-Care with Ayurveda. And this event was going to be held at Lilydale, a spiritualist community near Buffalo, and it will be on August 2nd at 9:30 a.m. So I think I just finished all of our announcements.
That is a lot of stuff we got going on for a 3-year-old organization. There are a lot of ways to be connected with each other beyond just Sunday service every Sunday. If you want to get together and do the meditation, if you want to get together and be a member with our other spiritual practices, come to our in-reach events. And right now, we are inviting you to fellowship. And our question for today is, what inspires joy and hope for you in your life? So if you'd like to stick around and talk with us, please take the invitation that you've just been given.